What's up, you guys? Joe Dobby here. I am now a Deck Out Gaming affiliate. Use Joe Dobbs Deck Out at checkout. Deck Out Gaming has tons of singles for Pokemon, Dragon Ball Super, and Digimon TCG, as well as One Piece. They now buy list as well, so don't hesitate to reach out, and they got your back. Really high customer service ratings. Thank you guys, and yeah, let's get to the video. What's up, YouTube? It's Joe Dobby back at it again with another video for you, and today I wanted to go over my Gen Con Online Regional Weekend experience. So for those of you that haven't been keeping track or don't follow me on Twitter, I have actually registered for 2 online regionals, both the Thursday and the Friday, just to try and secure my invite. It has been a long journey towards getting my invite, and so far it doesn't seem like we made it, but we'll see depending on day 2. So I'm gonna go over all of this later on, but I've had a lot of, I think my prior regionals experience, I had one top 32 finish, and unfortunately I did not get an invite there, and I've been so busy in between then and now that I had only managed to take 2 online regionals on through Gen Con, and that is just for these last 2 days. So we're gonna go over kind of like day 2 mainly with Belphemon. So Belphemon, I am lucky to say that I have managed to place top 32, going 23rd place, finishing with a record of 5-2. That said, I'm gonna go over how the matchups worked out and all the really cool things about that. But fun fact about that event on the Friday was that I was the only Belphemon deck in the entire top 32 finish. So while I am proud of that, I am kind of sad that in the last game I had a favorable matchup that I lost because of suboptimal hands. And honestly, there was a game specifically where I think I should have taken a mulligan and I didn't, and that ultimately punished me. I thought that having purple memory boosts and stuff were gonna get me the pieces that I needed, and while it did get me there, it was not fast enough for, you guys guessed it, Jessmon. The 4th place Jessmon. Shout out to Aston for getting that placement and pretty much kicking my butt despite having the more unfavorable matchup. So I'm gonna dive into all of this briefly, but for starters, I just wanted to get you guys into the headspace of how I prepared for the tournament. So as I've mentioned, I've been really busy, so I haven't really been able to stream as much on Twitch. So I've been just creating YouTube content whenever I found free time, really, just so I could, just stay, just to continue to create content, because I do like creating content, creating deck lists, interviewing people, and just having fun with Digimon TCG and a bunch of other card games too, like Universes. But I haven't had the opportunity to play at locals as much as I could have, and life's just been really busy in a great way, so no worries there. But yeah, due to that, it's been a little bit difficult to create content and play. So I had to pick one or the other, and in this case, for the last few months, I've been creating content on the side just to let y'all know that I'm still in the game, just not streaming as much, actually not streaming at all up until this week. So up until this week, I had very minimal testing, and I managed to build a Mervamon Rush deck and a Belphemon Rush deck for both regionals. Hindsight, I think I should have played Belphemon both days, but the Merva Rush deck would have been really, really good depending on my matchups, and we're gonna go over that right now. So Mervamon is a very good deck. It runs 11 memory boosts, and I think it is one of my more powerful come out of nowhere win the game decks. Unfortunately, I did face 2 horrible matchups in the form of an Old Force Digimon and in the form of a Mirage Galgamon. So the difficulty with Mirage Galgamon is adding cards to your hand to gain a substantial amount of memory and being able to bounce your Gazimon. So when you bounce the Gazimon, I'm unable to really just control how much memory Mirage Galgamon gains, and from there it was just a really brutally one-sided matchup. No matter how much I tried to set up my memory to pretty much just OTK, I would not be able to set up my trash because I was either hitting a bunch of tamers or the scatter mode was just not dying, period. So I could not get anything in trash for Mervamon to really just finish the game, even though I had enough memory to Mervamon and swing 3 times. As far as Old Force Digimon, same story. Scatter mode really needs to die in the course of the game in order to get some Dark Lizard mons in there, some Ignite mons in there, so you can really finish off that Mervamon play. You don't even need to play a body. Once you have things in trash, you can generally just leave it, really. But Ulforce Vidramon, it was more difficult because it was piloted by none other than a local, Kiki, who is very, very good. I think he top 10 placement with Ulforce Vidramon both days. Insane. That said, Ulforce Vidramon has a lot of things that make purple a very difficult play into. So hitting a lot of tamers just makes it really difficult. In addition to that, what makes it even more difficult is the bounce. But I think the most underrated effect in this whole thing, like, you could be afraid of the bounce, afraid of your scatter modes not dying, but the worst part is being a blocker with evade. The reason why is because you generally Merva for game, and if you have one blocker, that messes up your calculations, especially if they have a lot of security still. So you need to be pushing the aggression very, very early, and if they go into Ulforce Vidramon by turn 3, because they can do that with the right amount of memory, and with Arena, it becomes very painful. So sometimes I would only get them to like 4-3 security, and that was not game, especially with a blocking Ulforce staring down, pretty much staring me down. So really difficult finish there, unfortunately, and that ended up being I think a 5 and then a drop. So it was like a 5-round drop. I think I ended up like 3-2 or something like that, or 3-3. Because the last game was a drop, but all good. It is what it is. And for day 2, where Belphemon comes in, I'm going to be talking about the deck list at the end, but for now, I want to go into the matchup. Okay, you guys, so we're going to go into the matchups, but first, I kind of want to go over kind of like how I practiced for this event. I only had really 3 to 4 days of practice because of just how busy I've been, as I mentioned. And yeah, so day 1 was Sunday, prior to the Thursday, Friday Gen Con, and I practiced Mervamon, Belphemon, just kind of in equal, like three matches each. Day 2, I focused on Belphemon, Mervamon again, but I did like 2 matches Mervamon, 3 matches Belphemon, because I found out that day 1 I was misplaying a little bit, so I wanted to kind of like refine my play for Belphemon. And then day 3, I focused Mervamon only, because I knew that Mervamon had some really tough matchups, and I wanted to face those tough matchups like Mirage Gao and Ulforce. So I did have like a match with Ulforce, a match with Mirage Gao, and it's really hard to get out of that situation. So I'm not going to dive into that further. Long story short, day 1 I ended up dropping round 5 because I faced off against Ulforce Vidramon and Mirage Gao, and that gave me the X2. I think I even X3 finished because of the drop, to basically be out of the tournament from there. So unfortunate, but against Shine Gray, like Mervamon Rush just goes crazy, you guys. Like, I highly recommend trying it out, especially if your meta is full on Shine Gray and Royal Knights. That said, we're gonna focus more on day 2 and the matchups, and at the end I'll show you guys my deck list, and that is mainly because I just want to show you guys the deck list at the end. But going into round 1, we faced off against Alphamon. My opponent was very nice. It was kind of early in the morning because I had a late night. And yeah, it was very close. It was down to the wire. We were both kind of, none of us were bricking, I'd say, but we were both getting our lines of play down very, very well. My opponent managed to set up everything that he needed to pretty much defend. And the Alphamon, the new Alphamon, was really rough into Rage mode, because for every time I would be able to prevent an attack, Alphamon would spend a turn preventing my Rage mode from attacking until the next turn, right? So I had to really puzzle my way out of not only having that Rage mode stay on the board and not able to attack, because I want that Rage mode in trash if it's not going to do anything. That way I can set up another sleep mode play, right? And what happened was I ended up finding a way to do that, and that was fine. There is one thing I'd like to apologize to my opponent for. There was a moment in the game where it was like, it wasn't game changing, but it was a misuse of the resolution of Kurata, the tamer, Akihiro Kurata, I think, where end of opponent's turn, you draw 1 and trash 1, and then you tuck it under a Belphemon in its name to delete a level 6 Digimon. I haven't faced off against Alphamon as much as, you know, pretty much since BT9, where it really gave me problems. And unfortunately, I declared to delete the Oryuken mode. It wasn't a blocker, it couldn't redirect, so I still had lethal, I still and eventually swung for game, whether it was on the board or not. But because of that because of the fact that I resolved that effect incorrectly, I did feel really bad. So my apologies, because my opponent did trust me. I was like, Kurata will delete that Alphamon, and then I just said Kurata will delete that, and then he was just like, okay. So that was kind of my bad. That said, like, I don't think it changed the outcome too much, so that's okay. All my opponents, by the way, were very great people. They were very fun to face, and the back and forth, like the banter in the middle of like high competition, was much appreciated, especially because I was really nervous going into my online kind of like regional, because I haven't been in a online regional since the start of this year, I think, honestly. I don't really know the last time I was on an online regionals, which is crazy. I mean, if I look back, probably didn't even feel like that long ago, maybe, but I just don't remember it. Things have just been crazy. So that was round one, very good. Luckily, we're able to squirm our way out of that one, and then we go into round two. So now we are going into kind of like round two of the event, and once again, like the first two rounds were incredibly crazy because I was like kind of trying to recover from some of the misplays, because I was unfamiliar with certain matchups. Like I knew against our Royal Knights, which was my round two matchup, Psychmon was really good. So I thought, you know, I'll be fine as long as I have Psychmon on the board. Wasn't always the case, because Royal Knights can get wide enough anyway at times to swing for game, and you know, I only run like the Devimon blockers and the XTs, which is typically enough, but at the same time, like, you also want to be able to swing for game and safely win the game. So my opponent played really, really well, played Royal Knights very, very well into the fact that I had 3 Psychmon in my deck. And towards the end, unfortunately, unfamiliarity with my Belphemon deck led to my opponent kind of like misplaying, pretty much, because he got out all the knights out, and all these Royal Knights were ready to swing, but because he asked how many cards I had in my hand, I said 10. I was like, oh, why are you asking? Like, do you think you don't have lethal? Because I also like can't swing 2 checks, right? Even if there were only 1 check left, I can't swing 2 checks, etc., because he had a blocker out, right? So ultimately what happened in this scenario was he thought that Belphemon sleep mode was not once per turn, and he didn't ask, so I didn't tell. I just like, I didn't volunteer the information, but if my opponent asked, like, is Belphemon sleep mode's effect once per turn, can you end an attack once per turn, obviously you have to answer that, and I would have said sure. But because my opponent kind of assumed from the get-go, okay, I was just like, I didn't really like affirm that as well. I was just kind of silent. And then my opponent like just set up blockers at that point. He ended his turn on blockers. And then I also misplayed because I had 3 Karatas out. And instead of using all 3 Karatas to delete the blockers that were remaining, I ended up leaving a blocker on board because I ended up tucking only 1 Karata. Because for some reason I thought that you could only resolve 1 Karata. So silly. I did all the draw trashes, but I didn't resolve all the second half effects to like delete a level 6 with the other 2 Karatas, which was really sad and embarrassing. But I saw that as soon as I tucked it in, and I saw his board and I reviewed my board, and I was like, Karata should have been tucked 2 more times. Like, that should have been fine. And I didn't do that, but ultimately, once again, like, because my opponent thought that I could just stop all these attacks, he like swung but played defensively at the same time, and then I ended up with the win. So the first 2 games were really awkward because I was misinterpreting effects, I was misplaying, my opponent was also kind of like misinterpreting effects, also misplaying, so it was kind of awkward. I will say the Alphamon player did not really misplay piloting his deck at all, period. Like, it was just very well piloted. It was just, I think Belphemon is not as played in the meta, not practiced as well, so it's not as familiar. So I was pretty much fine. That said, going into round 3, I ended up facing Hunters, and this was where I kind of did that anime kind of like motion of just like pulling yourself together. Going into round 3, I took deep breaths. I was just like, we're gonna get it. We're gonna breathe. We're not gonna misplay. We're gonna do a mental like reset and like make sure that we're kind of wide awake, alert, ready to go. And I took a bunch of deep breaths from here on out in between games. And I think that really helped me mentally reset for the rest of the competition. And that's why I was able to hold on as much as I could. So round 3, we faced off against Hunters, and round 4, we faced off against Hunters as well. Both times, it was pretty much a pretty good matchup for me, because once I got into Rage mode, everything on my opponent's boards would be deleted. Psychmon also stops Digi-crossing, which was awesome. And when my opponent would get into Quartzmon, I'd still have a Rage mode. I always made sure that I would leave my Rage mode unsuspended to make sure that I would not play into Quartzmon. And if I had to, I would just drop Astamon again, and then all of a sudden I've got Sleep mode. I can stop an attack. Next turn, I can swing over that Quartzmon safely. But ultimately, I ended up taking both games against Hunters pretty decently. I would say, though, that my round 3 opponent bricked for one of those games, which was rather unfortunate. But in the round 4 Hunters, my opponent played well and wasn't bricking, and it was a very close game both ways, so it was pretty good. Now, going into round 5, which was my first loss of the tournament, it was actually my worst matchup of the entire tournament, and it shows because my opponent was getting suboptimal hands, as he was being kind of like vocal about. He's like, oh, I didn't really like, oh, this hand, let me see if I get punished doing this. And he's like, well, I did get punished, you know what I mean? But he was able to recoup. Very good player, topped both days as well, I think, for both on the Gen Con online. So I thought, you know what, even if I lose to this, I will have pretty good tiebreakers. So hopefully I'll at least be 18th or 19th, and then invites can pass down. He did say he already had his invite as well, but I had to beat him, kind of like a boss monster type deal. So I was like, okay, let's do this. Jodabi boss monster arc. Ultimately, I could not get over Raid. Raid was such a big deal. Even if I dropped a Devimon on the board, the fact that you can unsuspend as Wargreymon, and like it's pretty much easy. Because I'll stop an attack, play a blocker or something like that, and he'll be able to swing. Having 2 Raid Wargreys in game 3 was what solidified his win for me. He ended up dropping a Greymon turn 1, and I could not punish it, which was the worst feeling ever. I absolutely could not punish it. And yeah, he was able to get into 2 Wargreys and just win the game from there. Round 6, I faced off against Red Hybrid. So Red Hybrid I have never played against, but my opponent bricked pretty much like both games, unfortunately. So despite my opponent going as far as they could with the Red Hybrid, wasn't unable to finish. And yeah, I was able to just pretty much stop the attack, like, period. That said, there was a point where I had a vulnerable sleep mode out because I couldn't tuck a rage mode, but I needed to stop the attack, right? Because they can go for an OTK potentially, because I saw that the deck runs Blitz Omnimon. So I was like, okay, I go into sleep mode here, I can stop the attack. You know what I mean? Like, I'll be fine. If I stop the attack, I play a blocker, etc. Make it more difficult, right? But I was vulnerable. So if my opponent had the Emperor Greymon or Kaiser Greymon, whatever, that deletes sleep mode, I would have been done for, but it was digivolved into another type of Emperor, and I was safe, which was lucky, and I ended up winning that there. The final round was an absolute, I'm gonna be honest, it was absolutely heartbreaking for me, because game 1 against Jesmon, I immediately won. Like, it was like basically from round 3 till the end of the tournament, I felt that I was piloting at my highest peak in months. Literally since the Belphemon Cardimagica Regional in, like, what was it, April. Literally, I felt that I haven't been piloting this good round 3 and onwards since April, because I got myself together and made sure that I was going to play well enough, because my opponents deserve that from me. They expect high level competition to resolve effects properly and not mismanage sequencing and not take things back. And I felt that round 3 onward, I was able to be a good example of that. And I hope that everyone from round 1 to round 7 was able to kind of be okay with that. But yeah, against Jesmon, it was pretty much heartbreaking because my opponent was already talking about how like this was like a really bad matchup. I was hoping that I could dodge this the whole tournament. Like he was hoping that he could dodge Belphemon like the whole tournament. Didn't really want to face it. Made it this far because he dodged Belphemon the entire event. And then here I am thinking, you know what? We took round 1 in like the first maybe 15 minutes, 15, 20 minutes. So let's do it. You know what I mean? Let's close this out, right? And unfortunately, round 2 and 3, my opponent pretty much just, in my opinion, I don't know how you feel, bro, but in my opinion, he had the nuts. Like, just got into Savior Jesmon in raising by turn, because he went second or went first, I think. So like by turn 2, went into Savior Jesmon, and by turn 3 or 4, we saw a GX with 4 to 5 sisters on the board. And turn 3 or 4 is normally would be okay. It wouldn't be great, but it would be okay. It would be well enough for me to have stuff in trash, to have at least rage mode in trash. But I was missing either the sleep, either the rage, or the Astamon. And the fact that there is an effect that allows you to swing over me makes it pretty difficult. And I didn't have a blocker in trash that early into the game because I really needed to trash my rage modes. And yeah, I mean, what can I say? Like, I just ended up losing the second and third game, despite winning the first one pretty handedly. And I ended up losing to Jesmon, which I thought would have been one of my better matchups because I did play against Bakun, who's a friend of mine, and we did go 3 rounds Jesmon in a Belphi, and I was very confident into that matchup. And the fact that, you know, by turn 3 you see this GX staring you down the face with 4 other Sistermon and you don't have a single rage mode in trash, that was really tough to handle. Because I honestly thought this was gonna be my run in a while. Like, I don't think I've top 8'd since... I haven't top 8 a tournament over 250 people since BT4, guys. I top 32 every few months because I'll join the odd regional, the odd ulti cup, and I will top 32 like pretty decently. But I just the top 8 was just tough. So the fact that I couldn't get that was tough, especially against Jesmon. But you know, kudos to all the pilots that I faced. You guys played absolutely well. My apologies again to the misuse of that Kurata to the Alphamon. And yeah, I hope that everybody had fun at that event. I had tons of fun, regardless of my record. I'm proud to say that despite going 23rd place, I am at least the only Belphemon in top 32. And then the Saturday, George just top 10s again with Belphemon. So I'm like, what am I doing wrong? But, you know, ultimately, it's like a learning experience. So, yeah, I'm gonna dive into my deck list and kind of like the choices. All right, so ultimately, this was the deck that I chose to play at this regionals, and it performed very well. I just wish that Deathclaw was a Shine Greymon Ruin mode, hindsight. Because I actually really thought that Ruin mode was more value than Zort for both defensive and offensive purposes. But I'll explain that in a bit. I'll go over the deck list really quickly. So Phascomon is just the best rookie for now, but as we start testing more, I'm pretty sure we can replace Phascomon with something else. I think I should have just gone like none of that stuff. I should have just probably gone like 3 Ghazi, 4 Psych, and 4 Proto. Like, I think you can get away with that, not gonna lie. Like, I know Phascomon has that extra draw trash, which is a pretty big deal. But with a combination of Kapuri and Demi-Meramon as eggs, like, I think it's enough. Because I really just want Scatter Mode and AT to do everything I need to do. But that said, the rookies were fine. They were perfect for what I needed to do that day, and it was fine. Level 4s, no complaints. This is probably one of the best level 4 lineups that you'll see. I did experiment with EX1 Ogremon, or not EX1 Ogremon, I think it was BT6 Ogremon. I experimented with BT6 Ogremon, but then I kind of slowly realized that BT6 Ogremon and Devimon were gonna do the same thing. They were gonna stop a potential attack next turn, right? They were either gonna block or they were gonna delete a level 4. The only difference is, if you're playing in the blue matchup, so Mirage Galgamon, I think the level 5 can bounce Devimon. Versus with Ogremon, you can delete like an accompanying Gaomon or Galgamon, right? So because you can do that, that's better. Because in that scenario where you're getting bounced, you're unable to block, right? So being able to delete a following attack, like a level 4 or lower attack, is good, especially when Gaomon adds cards to your hand when attacking, I think. So that's kind of the only situation where I thought the Ogremon would work out, and I didn't see Mirage, luckily, so that was fine. Excuse me. The Eisvod came pretty clutch because it allowed me to get into Astamon, or it became a target for Astamon when I needed to delete something, which was really big. More often than not, the Eismon was there for me to be deleted by Astamon, to be honest. I didn't Digivolve over that thing at all. Maybe like once or twice. As far as the level 5 lineup, I'm pretty okay with this. 3 XTs were what I initially tested with in the first place, and I kept the level 5 lineup since I built the deck in alpha, so I'm good. The 4-4 mandatory, like you absolutely need to see Rage Mode as early as possible. Sleep Mode I can see like early, late, mid-late game. No, not mid-late. You need to see Sleep Mode like towards the end of early game, early mid-game, that kind of thing. And you need to start seeing them fast as soon after that in order to get going, which was fine. There were times where I would high roll and have all 3 of these cards: Astamon, Belphemon, Sleep Mode, and I'd have a Proto Gizmon, and ultimately that was game, right? But yeah, 4-4 is like mandatory. I tried to play around with 3 to get away with, you know, adding more things, but you don't really need more things. You just need this guy to do its job. 3 copies of Nidhogg. I wanted to go absolutely greedy here because I saw George's list and I saw the Latin America list at top, and I wanted to smash them together and have my own type of ratios for them. So instead of 4 Nidhogg in the LATAM list, I ran 3 Nidhoggs, and this was amazing because I was able to hold on to 2 Nidhoggs at times and set my opponent to 0, and they were going to put me to a minimum of 3, so I could do stuff at 3, which is awesome. In addition to that, Nidhogg was a really good play extender, and I was really able to cycle it back through calling from Darkness, which was good. So like I would honestly just like cycle Astamon and Nidhogg more often than not, because I would have Gift in hand or Sleep Mode already in hand, and that would be a pretty good deal. As far as Kurata, you keep it at 3, that's fine. Deathclaw should have really been a Shine Greymon Ruin mode. So the reason why I say this is because there were so many times where I just didn't draw well. Like I didn't draw into the things that I needed, but I was able to at least discard things. So there were times where I had like 3 Gifts of Darkness in hand, and I just had to play them one after the other, and I was running out of Belphemon and trash. So the way I see it was, if I could at least go into Shine Grey Ruin mode, you know, I reduce all the DP blanket effect of the board by 5k, so as soon as you raise a rookie, it's dead. You can't Digivolve over it and try to get, like, you spend a turn in raising, or what you raise dies, which would have been really good. And the next turn, when Shine Greymon attacks, it pretty much sets up both Proto Gizmon and Astamon for me, and it blankets another 5k, and it deletes itself, sending all of my rage modes back in the trash, especially when I've used Gift twice on the same stack, right? I had multiple games, not gonna lie, I had like at least 2 games where I had a stack of like 2 to 3 rage mode, and I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. Like, I literally at times would have to drop Astamon, delete, and then facilitate the effects. That kind of thing, which is wild to me. Yeah, so Shine Greymon Ruin mode would have actually made it a lot easier, instead of me waiting for calling, waiting for Deathclaw, or trying to delete it with like another type of deletion like Astamon, you know what I mean? So I think the Ruin mode would have been definitely worth testing. 2 purple Memory Boost was what I settled for. I actually don't like Memory Boost, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I'd rather play Matt or Jack Raid even. I'd rather play Jack Raid, not gonna lie, because you only need memory when you're going in. I guess purple Memory Boost was cool when I needed to find things, but purple Memory Boost actually baited me into a loss against Jesmon, because I opened with a Proto Gizmon and 2 purple Memory Boosts, and I thought, okay, pay 1 memory to drop a body, and with a boost, find another body. And that was so bait because I ended up, instead of like, that could have been a scatter mode and I could have dropped the scatter mode and I could have done 3 checks in a security, like 2 checks in a security, or I could have at least done 1 and had stuff in trash. That purple memory boost prevented me from throwing things in trash early into the game because I had to play it to look for something. If I mulliganed into a scatter mode, that would have been more ideal, and the odds would have been higher too, because that's an 8% chance over a 4% chance to redraw into a scatter mode off the mulligan. So I should have played the odds, but instead I was like, you know what? Like, the purple memory boost will be good for late game. I didn't even make it to late game because turn 2, this guy was at Jesmon, and then turn 3, this guy was at GX with like 5 sisters, and the game was over. So that was really sad. And then Gift of Darkness, I need it at 3, but in security it's so bad. Like, it's not so bad. I'm exaggerating, but if you don't have a Nidhogg or any of your level 6s, or even the Shine Greymon Ruin mode, like I didn't run a level 7, like a lot of your opponent's stuff is like, it doesn't really kill anything, which is tough. So that was the biggest issue. Like, you always had to hold on to like a 6, and you would trash that 6, which was unfortunate. And if you trashed a sleep mode, you already used it for gift. I was like, I'm never gonna trash sleep mode, right? So rage mode is kind of like the best trash option, but sometimes I didn't have rage mode because I trashed it already, and it just became difficult from there. But that said, guys, that is pretty much the deck profile and my Gen Con experience. Overall, it was a really good tournament. I had lots of fun, and I'm just glad that from a competitive standpoint, I was able to really reset post round 2 and kind of gather myself to close out the tournament well enough to at least top 32 by going 23rd place. Thank you guys so much for watching, and yeah, I hope you like this video. If you like it, please like and subscribe, and yeah, I'll be posting more content. I'm gonna try to be more frequent with it. Thank you. Bye.